We met 8 years ago. Back then, I was young, ambitious, and on the verge of significant life changes. She was beautiful, smart, but there was a shadow of doubt and insecurity in her eyes. We met at a mutual friend's party, and there was an instant connection between us, something I couldn't explain in words. From that moment on, we were inseparable. We faced challenges, celebrated successes, and built a future together. After 7 years of being together, we finally decided to get married. It seemed that our journey was filled with love and understanding. However, deep down, I always sensed a certain instability in her inner world. From the very beginning of our relationship, she talked about her fear of abandonment, her insecurities, and although I always tried to support her, those fears never truly went away. She fought them every day. Our shared decision to start a family only heightened her anxieties. We dreamed of having children, but soon learned that she had fertility issues. At that moment, I realized that our future wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to walk this path with her. 2 years ago, I had to move to a different city for work, which turned out to be a major blow for her. Her fears intensified, and she began to withdraw into herself. Shortly after, she was prescribed antidepressants by her doctor. I had always been cautious about medication and believed it was better to work with psychologists before resorting to pills. But her condition was getting worse, and the doctor insisted on medication. While I was away, she grew closer to one of her colleagues. I didn't notice the changes at first because I was deeply immersed in my work and my own problems. I felt she was drifting away, but I dismissed it, thinking it was just a temporary challenge. A few months later, I returned home. Shortly after, I accidentally discovered a series of messages between her and her colleague. The messages were filled with flirtation and intimate hints. My heart raced and my mind spun out of control. I realized she had been emotionally unfaithful to me, if not physically. I confronted her immediately, and we fought long and hard. But after the shouting and the tears, she swore it was a mistake, that she was confused and didn't know how to deal with her emotions. We agreed to try to rebuild our relationship, began seeing psychologists, and worked on restoring trust. A year passed, and we seemed to have restored some sense of stability. We even decided to get married, despite the mistakes of the past. I believe we had overcome our difficulties, but soon new challenges knocked on our door. We decided to try IVF, as having children was a shared dream we refused to give up on. The process was emotionally draining, especially for her. She struggled with feelings of helplessness, hatred toward her own body, and the fear of losing our dream. When the first embryo failed to implant, she completely shut down emotionally. During those days, she was on the verge of a breakdown. I sensed that something was wrong. She became more irritable, withdrawn, and it seemed like something was eating her up inside. I tried to support her, to be there for her, but a chasm was growing between us again. A few weeks passed after the failed embryo transfer. One night, when I couldn't sleep due to overwhelming thoughts, I took her phone. Yes, I knew it was wrong, but my intuition told me that something bigger was hiding beneath the surface. I found messages with one of her colleagues from work. These were not just flirtatious messages, but full of intimate discussions and confessions of physical intimacy. My wife had slept with him just days after our failed IVF attempt. My heart broke. This wasn't just emotional infidelity, it was a full-blown affair, and it had happened during the most difficult time in our lives. I woke her up immediately and demanded to know what was going on. She didn't deny it. She confessed to everything. She cried, begged for forgiveness, and explained that she had been under immense stress and sought comfort in him during a moment of weakness. I felt utterly betrayed and devastated. How could this happen after everything we had been through together? It seemed like all our efforts, all the months of working on our relationship, had been in vain. After her confession, our relationship was once again teetering on the edge of collapse. I was overwhelmed with conflicting emotions. On the one hand, I was deeply hurt and disappointed. On the other hand, I still loved her. As strange as it sounds, despite everything that had happened, I still wanted to be with her. We decided to work on ourselves separately. Both of us started seeing therapists. She agreed to increase her antidepressant dosage, but this time she also began actively participating in therapy, which gave me a glimmer of hope. We agreed that we needed to work on our personal issues before attempting couples therapy to rebuild our relationship. This time in my life was the hardest. Every day, I questioned whether forgiveness was possible. Could we ever regain trust? Or was it all pointless and we should just part ways? We began talking again. At first, the conversations were painful and tense, full of unspoken hurt and resentment. But gradually, step by step, we started to understand each other. She opened up about her feelings, how deeply she was hurt by her inability to conceive, how much she hated herself for it, and how her loneliness and despair led her to make that terrible mistake. I tried to be patient, although it was not easy. I began to realize that her actions weren't just an act of betrayal, but an expression of her inner turmoil, her pain, and her desperation. It didn't justify what she had done, but it helped me see the situation from a different perspective. We started reconnecting through small things, going for walks, having dinner together, discussing work and future plans. All of this was happening under the guidance of our therapists, and although the process was slow, I began to feel a connection between us once again. Trust is still the looming cloud hanging over us. Every night, I go to bed wondering what the future holds. Can I ever fully trust her again? Can I ever forget what happened? On the other hand, our love hasn't disappeared. It has always been strong, even in the toughest times. We have decided to try IVF again, despite all the challenges, and she has promised to work on herself and our relationship. We are still walking this path, step by step. Sometimes I feel like we'll overcome it all, and other times the future seems foggy and uncertain. But one thing I know for sure, love isn't always an easy journey. It requires effort, patience, and sometimes the ability to forgive. Will I be able to fully forgive? Only time will tell. But for now, despite everything that has happened, I'm still holding on to the thread that connected us 8 years ago, hoping it won't break.